So, hello and welcome, guys, to another episode. For those that are watching on the video in the Facebook group, you can see Elaine waving at y'all and me waving at you. And for those that are listening on the podcast afterwards, later, whenever this is available to the world, how are you guys doing? I hope you guys have been having a good time and learning from the series that we have going on with the recession, our ex, getting women physicians, and all humans, to be honest, to be prepared financially. It's funny. It's a privilege to bring everybody that I brought here. And I have the honor of introducing Elaine, who is one of the most kind-hearted humans that I've had a pleasure of getting to meet throughout this entrepreneurial journey. She's a woman physician. She's a psychiatrist. She's a real estate investor. She's a mama. But the reason why I have her here is because, number one, every time I hear her story, she's one of the most inspirational people that I know. But I also love how she's at the forefront of what is happening in our economy. And when I think about the people that I want to come talk to y'all, she had to be in it. So it took a lot of work, by the way, and a lot of scheduling and really her prioritizing her heart to give for her to be here. So before I even introduce you, I want to say thank you for coming. I know there's a lot of stuff that's going on right now. So you being here truly, truly warms my heart and means a lot to me and my people. So thank you for joining us today.
I mean, oh my gosh. So those of you that are watching the video can see I'm just blushing. That just means so much to me. I feel exactly the same way about you. And of course, I wanted to make this happen, to connect with you and then, to connect with this amazing audience and, do whatever I can to guide people through what might be a scary time. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We're sitting in the dark. It's late for both of us. Both of us are, trying to get the kids to bed, but it's important that we, help as many people as we can through what might be a scary time for people. That's also a time of great opportunity.
So before we get started, can I ask you to introduce yourself and tell people why I believe they should be listening to you? Because ultimately they're given 30 minutes of their lives to sit with us virtually or on a podcast. Why is Elaine amazing and they should listen to you? Pretty much.
Well, when you put it that way, that's a tough question. So as you mentioned, I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a mother of 4. I run Black Swan Real Estate. We're a vertically integrated real estate investment company and property management company. We have about 300 million in assets under management. We've been investing for about 12 years. And I think that, my real estate investing journey likely will speak to many people. So I started with just investing with the home that I lived in before my husband and I got married. We kept that as a rental all the way to today, running very large private equity funds and essentially being a large private equity firm and having grown the company organically in between. And today, because we are placing so much capital, we've spent about $100 million on real estate this year alone. When I think about how to be a real estate investor, of course, I have to continue to think about the fundamentals of, is it a great property in a great location, likely to attract a premium tenant and a great rent, all of those things. But I also really have to have my pulse on the macro economy and even the world economy and understanding how are interest rates changing things and how are oil prices changing things and what's happening in geopolitical conflict. And just there's much more time spent really understanding the macro economy than many years ago when I was doing much smaller real estate investing. And so I think that perspective, I hope, can be helpful for others, again, across all, whether someone is even thinking about maybe starting real estate investing during the recession or building a small portfolio or building a large portfolio, because I've done the whole gamut there. I hopefully I can offer people some perspective through this recession. And I'm just excited about the recession. So at 36 years old, I really wasn't truly able to participate in the 2008 recession. A little bit in that I bought my first home, that home that became the rental property when my husband and I got married. I bought that in the crash, recognizing that was an opportunity for me to acquire a home at a good price. But I didn't have the resources that I have today and the knowledge and the connections that I have today. And so I'm excited to invest through the recession. And of course, there are days of fears and worries. I don't want someone to think that it's all positive thinking all the time. It's all optimism all the time, but balancing that caution that I think we're great at as physicians, right? We're great at assessing a patient, of saying, is this a patient that's really sick? Is this a patient that needs a little bit of care or a lot of care? And we can do that in the economy as well, and look at all of the data and really understand how can we make the best decision with a challenging data set before us, the same way we do in a clinical situation.
I love it. I love it. And I love that you mentioned too, that even when you started out, this is what, 12 or 14 years ago, that you saw an opportunity. And there are a lot of things that we're hearing as we're interviewing people. And part of the reason why I brought this up, this whole thing we're doing this series, is because whenever there's a downturn, there is opportunities, right?
Absolutely.
And it's only going to happen if you're outside looking for the opportunities, training your eyes, and being in communities where people are like, don't hide. You got to stay out. You got to stay out. So I love that you referenced that. So what I would like for you to share with us is this, and I love this way of thinking. Imagine if you had a sister, and I don't know if do you actually have siblings?
I have a brother. No sisters.
Okay. Well, sisters are not fun. I hope my brother. But imagine you have a sister that you absolutely love, and you have all this information you have right now, this experience, this knowledge. And there's a lot about, Elaine's background that we are not talking about today. I've had her on the podcast, I don't know, once or twice, I don't know, whatever. But the bottom line is, go find that podcast so you can listen to Elaine's story. It is inspirational. But what I want you to do is this: if you could tell your sister 3 things that you want her to do, you're like, okay, girlfriend, I love you, and I want you to do this with this economy, what will those things be?
The number one thing is a mindset thing, or is a way of understanding the world. And it's about seasons. So people that have come to Zoom calls and things that I have put on know that I'm at my home office right now, but at my office, I have a picture of a tree with, the leaves of all 4 seasons, because I find that paradigm is so helpful to think about everything, to think about who we are as human beings, who we are in our career, who we are in our family journey, and then who we are in the economy. And the seasons always follow one another. And there are things that need to happen in each of the seasons. So in spring, it's planting, it's planting. There's that, feeling of life and vibrancy in the air. Summer is hard work. You're out in the fields, tending to those crops, wondering, when am I going to actually get the crop? You're doing the weeds. The farmers are working, from sun up to sundown. Fall is a time of plenty, a time of harvest. We've had a long fall, especially in real estate investing over the last several years, that I think maybe have fooled some people into thinking that fall would always happen, that real estate would always be easy, that prices would always continue to go up, that rents would always continue to go up. But that's not true. After fall comes winter, and that's totally okay. And it is to be expected. And we just so happen to have lived through the longest economic expansion in history. That's just the way the cookie crumbled for a number of reasons. But I think it has perhaps confused some of us that winter is not normal, when winter is completely normal. Winter always follows fall. We're in an economic winter right now. That's kind of lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 that ties in very closely with that is that the data is very confusing. So I spend a lot of time looking at interest rate, what the Fed is doing, what the executive branch is doing, what consumer price index is doing, producer price index, the PPI, geopolitical conflict, lots of data. And declaring a recession, for those of you on the podcast, I just did my little air quotes, a recession is always done retrospectively. And so it's very easy for economists to look at what happened in the past and say, oh, from that time to that time, there was a recession. But we, as consumers and investors, more importantly, as investors, whether it's real estate or whatever you're doing to grow your wealth, you must continue to grow your wealth through a recession, we don't get the luxury of looking back retrospectively. We have to wake up every day and make that decision. What am I going to do today to continue to preserve and grow my wealth? And the data is crazy. Unemployment is very low. Wages are very high. The labor market is very strong. Those are things that typically do not happen during a recession. But inflation is very, very high. And that's why the Fed is raising interest rates, is to attempt to bring down inflation. But some people will say that inflation is driven by supply because of China being closed down and the global supply chain being disrupted and the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And so we're solving a supply side problem by trying to bring down demand by raising the cost of money, by raising interest rates. So there's just all these things, whirling and swirling. Typically, a recession is defined as 2 quarters of GDP loss, and that has happened. But the most recent quarter, there was GDP growth. So kind of lesson number 1 is that winter always follows fall, and that is totally okay. We are in an economic winter. Lesson number 2 is, even when the data is very confusing, we still need to wake up every day and think, what can I do today to preserve and grow my wealth? We don't have the luxury of sitting out recessions. Absolutely not. Recessions happen. They, like I said, it's been the longest economic expansion in history, but they do happen. And we have to grow through them. And spring always follows winter. Let me say that again. Spring always follows winter. And so we need to survive and thrive through winter. And, I love what you said about being outside, because that fits this paradigm so well of, we can choose to hibernate and struggle and suffer through winter and kind of peek outside of the curtain and just be afraid. And, if I go out there, I'll freeze to death, I'll die. But lots of people go outside and ski and snowboard and have hot chocolate and look at holiday lights and really enjoy winter, right? So let's just decide to be those people that survive and thrive through winter, and then also know that spring is coming, and do the things that need to happen in winter, growing cautiously, but growing, because it's great to buy things when they're on sale, right? It's great to buy things when other people are retreating from the market. Real estate investors, so I encourage people to buy real estate. And then know that spring is around the corner. But if we're inside and we're just looking out the curtains, we won't know when spring has happened, and we'll completely miss the opportunity to really grow wealth when spring comes, and we'll be rusty and we won't have the skills that we need. So the way we approach the economy changes. But as physicians, we wouldn't say, well, I just don't treat patients. Well, we just treat them differently, right? Like, this patient is bleeding. That's what this patient needs us to stop the bleeding. This patient is delirious. They need us to treat the delirium. But we still treat them. We have a skill set and we're able to adapt to whatever we see. It's the same thing in the economy. And then the third thing would be, of course, I'm a real estate investor. So I love real estate. I love that real estate is a hard asset. There's sticks and bricks and dirt, backed by contracts, leases, right, where a resident pays the rent, that is pegged to inflation. So that means that typically, as inflation goes up, the value of real estate goes up. That's backed by paper debt, which is a mortgage, leverage. So as the value of the real estate goes up, the mortgage stays the same. The bank doesn't knock on your door and say, oh, the value of your property is higher, now you owe me more. So you're able to get that spread. And of course, there's a fear that during a recession, the value of real estate might come down, but I just believe in holding forever. And so that there are bumps along the way. Gary Keller taught me Gary Keller is of Keller Williams, likely one of the most brilliant real estate minds in the world. And he taught me that real estate investing is a yo-yo on an escalator. And so we don't worry as much about the yo-yo as we do getting on the escalator and going up. And when you have a hard asset that's pegged to inflation, that's backed by paper debt, you want to get on as many of those escalators as possible. Know that the yo-yo is going to happen and just be completely at peace with it. Those are my 3 lessons.
I love that, yo-yo on an escalator. Oh, I
wish I could claim it as my own, but it's Gary's.
No, thanks for giving him credit. So I'm going to ask you, because I know you guys do a lot of real estate investment and I'm a huge fan of yours. by the time you guys are watching this, she's going to come to my program to talk to my women about how they can be part of what she's doing and how she's growing. Because what I do with my money school is helping women learn how to take control of their finances without working extra shifts. And part of that is by investing ourselves, but also partnering with people that are going to be our hands and feet to do that. And Elaine is one of those people. So what are some things you guys are going to be planning to do differently? And I know, of course, it's going to be evolving and changing based on what the climate is saying, but what are some things you guys are thinking about doing to sort of help you be a part of what's happening? I mean, as a business, what are you guys doing? I'm curious.
Yeah, excellent question. So our investment thesis has really been the same for the decade plus that we've been investing, which is to buy high quality real estate in great locations, improve it via either physical renovations or management improvements, most often both, do a cash out refi to pull out the equity and then hold it forever. That has never changed in the decade plus that we've been investing. Now, that being said, the tactics have changed a quarter. So when we first started investing, it was kind of at the bottom of the post 2008 crash. And we were much more involved in big renovations. So buying properties for 30% of their value, doing huge renovations and really driving value that way. And then as the market ticked along over the decade, those projects were harder and harder to come by. And so then we were focused more on buying great properties in a great location that was likely to appreciate quickly, but doing the same plan. And in the last, let's say 6 months or so, it's been very challenging to acquire real estate. I mean, you basically, so we do both single family and large multifamily. So we have we're different in that way. Most firms either do just single family or just large multifamily. We buy properties all the way from 200,000 to 50 million. And across that whole range in the last, let's say, year, I mean, you literally had to say, like, here's the purchase agreement, over asking price, close on the day that the seller chooses, no inspections, no contingencies whatsoever, and my firstborn and free tacos for life. Like, I mean, it was just crazy, right?
Yep, pretty much.
But that was the strategy that needed to happen to succeed. And now, I mean it when I say, like, I am genuinely excited that we can put together deals, a real deal, a real coming together with a buyer and a seller of the seller has a property they want to sell. The buyer would like to acquire that property. How do we find a mutually advantageous situation? And we can explore, maybe it's price, maybe it's terms, maybe it's closing date, maybe it's creative financing. There's just so much more value that can be created right now because you can actually get these people on the phone and they are eager to talk to buyers. And so we're excited to be buyers right now. Like I said, we're going to acquire about 100 million in real estate this year. And really it's 100 million in Q3 and Q4. We acquired almost nothing in Q1 and Q2 because that's when we perceived that we were really at that peak of, and here's my firstborn and tacos for life. And I mean, it was like, this is just like, we're willing to be aggressive, just getting crazy. And now we're excited because sellers are eager to be creative and to create, win-win situations. So the things that we've put together in our deals over the last quarter and going into Q4 of 2022 is really all about financing. So many of these buildings have very nice, attractive, low interest rate financing in place. And if we're able to work with the bank, we can assume that debt and then either put a second piece of debt on, or perhaps do seller financing or do something to get to the purchase price. And so we're able to enjoy the benefit of that really low interest rate debt and enjoy the benefit of some price softening and some negotiation that's happening. Of course, getting fixed rate debt is very important. We don't have any variable rate debt whatsoever in our entire portfolio. That's one thing I strongly recommend against for anyone. We work with just local regional banks. We work with a lot of them. I mean, I think we have 19 or 20 banks that we have mortgages with at this point, but it's worth that administrative burden to have low fixed rate debt and someone that we're in relationship with, a real banker that knows us. We're not just a number on a spreadsheet. staying cash flow positive. That has always been something, over the decade plus. Cash flow became harder to come by over the last several years, but still staying cash flow positive. And now cash flow is getting a little easier to come by as sellers are more willing to negotiate. So that's how our strategy has stayed the same over the last decade plus, but our tactics are changing, and they'll continue to change. I have no doubt that our tactics in Q1 and Q2 of 2023 will be different than what I just said here. Though it will be similar. It's a slow evolution, but I think a good investor is constantly changing their tactics while having an overarching strategy.
I mean, that was a question that was for me. As well as the other people, right? And the reason why is we all have to learn from each other. We have to learn what people are doing. We have to learn the strategies. For us, a lot of our real estate, we have smaller portfolios than you guys do, but a lot of our real estate has been mostly like 20-25% down. And then we have one that was like second home loan, 10% down. But now though, as I'm looking at the climate, I'm like, babe, we should start. I mean, we're not going to be buying anymore at the end of this year, but we're like, maybe we need to be on the lookout for seller financing, because there's going to be those opportunities, because those that want to sell really want to sell, and you are the answer to their prayer, because they're like, please buy so that I can retire, please buy so I can relocate, or whatever it is that they're trying to do. So I think ultimately when you're prepped, meaning you have your finances together. And for those that are just starting out, I know some of this stuff may sound complicated and all that, but it's still back to the basics. It's still, where is your money going? What's your income doing for you, right? How are you your spending plan? Are you diversifying your spending? Are you spending only on liabilities, or are you spending on liabilities and assets? Right. Mm-hmm. So those principles are the same. Now, what we're talking about is in the asset category of how do we now help increase that asset category as we go into this economic recession that we already are in, and how can we look back at the end of this next couple of years and say that we've closed some of the wealth gap that existed. We've been part of, getting money really to expand in terms of the gender equity, in terms of like racial equity and all that stuff. It's funny. I haven't told many people this, but you may find it funny. I have this vision in my head that just came about like last week. And
I love visions.
I love visions. Right? They're so fun, but it's going to happen. And what I'm going to be doing is, in God willing, in 2025, I think it's 2025, I'm going to be throwing a party. And I see the vision of the party just celebrating women physicians in a room. And it may be part of a conference or not, but essentially it's going to be celebrating how well women physicians have done. So anytime I'm like, all right, I'm tired of talking about this gathering we're doing, I'm like, no, we have to, because in order for us to party in 2025, we cannot be old and still in-house hiding from the recession. And the other thing too is all of the stuff we're talking about improves your mental health. So this is money, this is mental health, this is relationship building, but we want you to thrive regardless of what the economy is doing. And we want you to have your cake and eat it. So you thrive, physically, emotionally, mentally, mindfully, and also financially. We want you to be well. And we're going to throw a party in 2025. So
I love it. I love it. I love it. I want to speak to that, just a little bit. It's just on my heart right now, about that money is about thriving, right? So, you alluded to a challenging background. I had a tough growing up, grew up in poverty. I was emancipated at 16 and really had to build everything that I have today by myself. And then with my husband, when I met and married him. And I remember a time when I was dog sitting for a friend and I fell asleep on her couch and her dogs chewed my glasses. And that would have been like financially devastating to me, right? Let's say $100 or $200, it would have been financially devastating. And at that point in my life, it was not financially devastating. And so I like woke up and I'm like, oh man, my glasses. And I never had to think about, oh, I need to, make her feel bad or ask her to pay for them or, cry or struggle myself or, anything like that. All I had to think about was, how do I safely drive home? And I will never forget that feeling. And I just had a very similar one. I just had a very serious health concern in a foreign country. And I was thinking about getting a medical flight home. And I don't want to say that it was like no thing, because this is a 5-figure thing we were talking about. but it was not front of mind. It was like, well, we will figure that out and it will be fine, but we need to make sure that I can safely get to US healthcare. And that's what I want for people, or those types of experiences where, whether it's a little thing or a big thing. Another one that really comes to mind is when my husband's mom passed away this summer. We were very lucky that we knew about 6 weeks in advance that things were really moving in that direction. And we were able to clear our schedules and be with her almost every day and get her into the best hospice and have all the resources. And she lived about 2 hours away until we were able to get her to the local hospice. And so we would drive there and I would just have these tears in my eyes thinking, I am so grateful that we get to do this. And it is my mission to make it that everyone who wants to do these types of things can do them. No one should have to miss out on the final time with their mother or whoever it is that they love because of finances. And what can I do to contribute to that? And so I just wanted to speak to those things that in the beginning of the call, we're talking about macroeconomics and interest rates and putting together deals. But I think, what you bring up there is really what is the most important part, which is wellness and mental health and connection and having the resources that we need to take care of ourselves and the people that we love. And that expands into charitable giving. It's just that money is power, right? Money is power. And to change ourselves and to change the world, the more resources we control, the more we can do that.
And it's interesting you brought that. I wasn't planning on sharing this, but my dad passed last year, and I remember it was in the hospital, and we knew he died 3 weeks after a diagnosis of cancer, and it was in the hospital, and I knew it was kind of the end, but I could see him struggling. And, I'm present enough that I can see that he was worried about something. And one of my dad's biggest fear and thing is one of his wishes is to be buried in Nigeria. And if my dad doesn't get buried in Nigeria, it would be hard for him to even think about that process. And I remember one of the only things he asked for was, he said, don't let me be too sick to travel to Nigeria. And when things looked like they were dire and we knew that there was not going to be treatment for what he had, and it was sort of declining, I started looking into getting him to Nigeria, and I was ready to fly in to be the physician on board. We looked at like the medical ambulance, and those were going to cost a lot of money, right? And at the end of the day, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I would be worried if there was a bump or turbulence. I'd be worried about him losing his life in midair. And because of that thought, I'm like, it's not safe for him to travel. But what I remember really well is looking at him, talking to him and said, listen, regardless of what happens, you're going to be buried in Nigeria.
Yes.
That was the last time that he smiled at me.
Yes.
And the smile, I'm going to start tearing up. I'm never going to forget that smile, right? And the only reason why I was able to make him that promise was because I'm like, I don't care how much it costs. Exactly. Not that I don't care how much it costs. I have no idea. And this is the middle of the freaking pandemic. I don't know logistically or like paperwork or legally what it was going to take. But I was like, I don't care what it takes. We're going to get you home. Like, we're going to get you back. And to be able to do that, I mean, you could say, well, he's dead and he's dead. But to be able to tell him that and feel like, well, we're not lying, to be able to do that. And then when we got him home, to be able to have the kind of funeral that he had was just everything, right? And so I agree with I'm not crying, I'm laughing. But just like we're just talking about grief.
This is the point of this. This is the point of all of this.
That's what it's about. And to be able to do that is the biggest gift that I could ever have given him. So that's what money lets you do. And every time I see a woman physician that's not able to, I mean, I'm not going to say I want to fly everybody in Sacramento first class to anywhere. I cannot do that yet at this point, right? But to be able to do a lot, to be able to in need and meet the need, and not go, well, I'm not able to, because like this is what it's about. And so 100% I agree with you. Sometimes the amount of dollars can get lost, but for you, maybe doing a lot would mean being able to help a single mama pay for childcare so that she can get a break. That could mean being able to do like the most, like could mean walking down the street, seeing someone with need and being able to meet that need. Could mean taking a break for yourself. Could mean having a weekend off. Could mean paying for childcare to do 2 extra hours a day so that you can rest while your kids do the things that they want to do with the childcare person. Like it is back to the basics. So regardless of what those numbers are, the basics are going to change, right? When your net worth is 100,000, it's going to be different. When your net worth is 100 million or 2 million or whatever, it's going to be different. But the basics is what it's about. And for you, whatever that is, that's what we want you to have at the end of this. We see limitless opportunities, and we're not going to be able to take advantage of everything, but we want you to be a part of it. And that's why we're recording at, I don't know, almost 9 p.m.
That's right. Oh. Absolutely. And, you know, my husband and I kind of have a little joke. He became a real estate agent through our real estate investing journey. And a lot of people would say, oh, you know, well, why did you decide to do that? And really in the beginning, we thought it was just for logistics. It was just, you know, I was in medicine and he had a challenging career. And if we only had to have the two of us to go look at any one property instead of a third person, then that made it that much simpler. And little did we know, you know, how much opportunity that opened for us. But it kind of created this joke of, you know, if you work at the Gap, you get jeans on sale, and that's good, right? People need to wear clothes. But if you're a real estate agent, you get real estate on sale. And that's really good because that is the most valuable thing that most people own, right? Outside of ultra fancy yachts and castles and stuff that, you know, most people don't own those, but most people live in some sort of home or an apartment or a single family home. And that opportunity there to get real estate on sale is coming for everyone in the recession. And if you just hold it long enough and it cash flows from the get-go and it's high quality real estate in a great location with the opportunity to improve it, who cares how much you pay for it if it dips a little bit in price, as long as it's cash flowing and you plan to hold and you've got great debt. Like you put these, you know, things in place. And as long as that kind of checklist is in place, scoop up as much of it as you can because there's so much opportunity. And this is the time to really grow wealth, to really grow changing one's life trajectory, all the things that we just talked about, getting assets on your balance sheet instead of just liabilities.
I love it. And 2025, y'all, we're having a party.
I love it.
Invited. I'm just telling y'all. So get your crap together. I'm a GI doc, so I can say get your shit together. I'm ready with you guys. But ultimately, it's about your wellness. And thank you for being here. Elaine, if people want to find you, where can they find you to learn more about what you're doing, to learn how they can partner with you and how you can be part of the vehicle towards their building of wealth? How can they find you?
The name of my real estate investment company is Black Swan Real Estate. We're a private equity firm, so we work with accredited investors for passive real estate investment opportunities. And our website is meetblackswan.com.
Fantastic. Very easy. Meetblackswan.com. I can remember that.
Yeah.
Thank you. This has been so good. And I blame you for making me cry. I think Sunny. Yeah, but thank you. Always a pleasure. Always a joy. And
absolutely. Absolutely. I love what you're creating.
All right, everybody. Hope this has been helpful. If you're watching, let us know. And if you're listening, I want you to share this with everybody, right? Whether they're physicians or not, we want everybody to be well. And the reason why I'm actually putting it on my podcast is so that it can get into the hands of non-physicians as well, because I want every single human to be well. So thank you guys. Leave us a review.
Absolutely.
And we love you. Bye, guys.